So for us, Git Bash is a primary tool since we are working on Windows and we need to create a Linux kind of environment for us to do all the CLI activities. Why CLI? Because DevOps is focusing on automation and we are trying to automate everything, whatever is possible. So for that, the basic minimum requirement is to have a Git Bash. Apart from Git Bash, what are the different tools that are required? VA editor. And in the VA editor, we have two different modes. One is the insert mode and command mode. How do we go to command mode? Any idea? How do we go to insert mode? Anybody has answers?
Yeah, when you press
Yeah, I, capital I, small a, capital A, small o, capital O. So all of these commands, all of these inputs will convert your command mode to insert mode, because basically once you log in inside, once you open the file, automatically it will be in command mode. If you want to change it to insert mode, you have to press any of these keys so that it will go to the insert mode. I will take you to the current cursor position. This capital I will take you to the next cursor position. Similarly, capital A will take you to the end of the line. This one is just one character before your cursor position. Small a is append, it will go to the next cursor position. Capital A will take you to the end of the line. Small o, basically it will take you to the next line. Capital O will take you to the previous line. Like that, there are options. It depends on your requirement. You can use one of these keys to go to the insert mode. To go to the command mode, what is a keyboard? What is a key? Escape. Escape is a key that is used to go away from your insert mode to command mode. Any doubts with respect to the basics of VA editor?
Yeah, colon WQ, I thought escape is saving, right?
See, in order to save the file, colon WQ is required.
Okay.
The command mode. Okay. The next thing is, in order to do other activities, like there are other shortcuts available. Wait a second. So if you look at it, there are other commands available. DD for deleting a line. YY for copy. P for paste. Like that, there are multiple options available. If you say 5DD, it will delete 5 lines. Like that, you can say 6YY, it will copy 6 lines. Whatever P that you do after that, that will copy from your cache. Whatever is copied or deleted, that will take it and then paste it over here. Dot is to repeat whatever command that you have done at last. CW is change word, DW is delete word. Like that, there are multiple options available. You just go through the document that I shared with you, practice it in the Git Bash. So basically, VA editor commands, you need to practice at least for about 15 to 20 minutes, so that you become familiar with the basic commands. Okay. Any questions on this at the high level? Any other topics that you want me to cover? Probably we'll have a hands-on session after probably 15 to 20 minutes. Now I'm going ahead with the next one. So we are going to talk about SSH key. The importance of SSH key is to do a passwordless authentication. Why passwordless authentication is required? Anyone? Kushal?
I mean,
yeah. Kushal, go ahead.
yeah, passwordless authentication will provide a more security.
Okay.
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 This is regard to public and private.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, we'll have a private key on the local machine. On the remote machine, we'll have a public key. So what happens is, say for example, you have multiple servers to be connected, and you want to do some operations. All these machines, if you want to connect using passwords, it will be too time consuming, and then it is too much of manual work. Instead, if you copy your public key to the remote machine, if you copy the public key to the remote machine, that's one-time task that you should do it. There is a way we can make it automated, so that every time when you create an instance, the public key is already copied. That happens automatically in EC2. EC2 instance, you create a private key, and public key is automatically copied to the remote machine, and private key is downloaded to the local machine. It is a .pem file. So private key is like your in your home directory .ssh authorized keys file will be your location for your public key. So private key, using the private key, when you log into the EC2 machine, it gets kind of validation. It does handshake, and then it allows you to log into this particular EC2 instance after the successful validation. Just give me a second. Okay. So basically, to automate the login process, we use key pairs. Okay. Any doubts so far with respect to the use of public key and private key? Srinivas, Srikanth.
So it is only our local.
Can you speak louder?
These keys are only for our local machines, right? So it will create.
See, it depends. If you want to really log in from one remote machine to another remote machine, also it is possible. See, if you look at this architecture, you can understand. Say, for example, it is machine to machine communication. Machine 1 to machine 2. What you're supposed to have on machine 1, you're supposed to have private key. On the remote machine, you need to copy the associated public key. It should be an association. This private key must be associated with this public key. Or this private key must be associated with the public key. Thing is, say for example, you have a username and password. right? It is a combination, right? Like that, private key is like a password and public key is like your username. So this you should have an understanding always. So no matter whether your machine one is local or remote, this will be your remote. For this machine, this will be your remote. So even this machine is on the internet somewhere. Once you have to log into this machine in order to log into the other machine. Clear? Okay. Then we'll talk about why AWS CLI, because these are the fundamental things for you to have an understanding of whatever we're going to see. Why AWS CLI? What is the purpose of using AWS CLI or access key secret key? How do we create access key and secret key? We need to go to AWS console, create IAM user, and then create access key and secret key from credentials. Correct? So this access key and secret key will be configured using AWS configure command. As long as you have AWS CLI installed on your laptop. So your git bash will identify AWS CLI is installed. What is the purpose of AWS CLI? To create resources, modify resources, and delete resources from CLI, from git bash. Why do we need to do this again? This is for, again, automation. Because sometimes you may need to create a different set of users, different set of resources, some EC2 instances, IAM users, or any other AWS resources. You can actually create using AWS CLI commands. Okay. What does AWS configure leaves you? It leaves you your home directory .aws /credentials file and .aws config file. What does credentials file contain? Access key and secret key. Config file contains your region and output. Okay. Any doubts so far?
No, sir.
Okay. What is the other thing that we have in the document I shared with you? Quickly looking at it. Okay. Next most important thing is about Git. Why Git is required? There are two things, right? If you are working within an organization, there are multiple people working on a same code base. So in order to maintain the version control system, or we call it as concurrent version system. That is basically version control and collaboration. For these two purposes, we are using Git. What are the different commands in Git? We have commands like
Git add,
Git init.
good. So add,
Git
commit,
merge.
yeah, git merge,
Git
if,
push.
Git init.
yeah, git init, git status, and git log. That is more important. Git log. That will show you the commits.
Yes.
So all of these basic commands are important in order to work with Git. So how Git works, architecture, any idea? It is again a client server architecture. So we have a GitLab or GitHub as a server. What is there on the local machine, on the client machine?
Shankar, 1 minute. So this git log is for git commit.
No. It will show you all the commit IDs, commit messages.
Oh,
All
okay,
the
okay.
in order to get the history of all the commits, you can use git log.
Okay.
Okay. So client, what is there in the client machine in terms of Git architecture? It is a Git tool. It is just a Git tool. So it is common for all GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, anything. This is a basic protocol in order to work with your GitLab or GitHub repository. Have you ever noticed that, I mean, there is no change in the command, irrespective of whether you are using GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or any other repository server, because that is implemented using the protocol called Git. Okay, any doubts? The first thing when you want to work with Git, first thing that you need to do is you have to do a git config -- global user.name, similarly user.email. You have to configure both, so that you will see it in the upcoming classes. We will try to configure it before we start working on Git. Again, little bit of Git architecture right now. What exactly is there in the, see, there are like 3 different stages. One is local, this one is remote, this one is your staging. So this is your working area. Whatever you do, whatever changes that you do, unless you do a git add, it doesn't come to the staging area. It comes to staging area only after you doing a git add. After you do a commit means it is like saving the commit. It comes to the local area. It is ready to be pushed to the remote. Once you do a push, it goes to the remote repository. Okay. In Git local machine, we have .git config file, which contains information about your remote repository. That is nothing but remote origin. So this is very much important to understand properly. See, if your remote origin in your git config file is not correct, then you will end up pushing to some other place, or probably your push will fail. Okay, any doubts on this? Feel free to ask. Okay, there are two different authentication methods available here. One is HTTPS, that is password based. There is one more authentication, that is SSH, that is passwordless. Okay, which one would you prefer?
Passwordless.
Passwordless. Okay. For that, what is required? For the passwordless authentication, we already spoke about it. You require private and public key. I have already said Git as a client server protocol. Git works as a client server. So since GitLab is a remote repository and a server, we need to copy our public key to the remote machine. That is nothing but your GitLab server. That is why in the pre-preparation prerequisite, I asked you to copy the public key to the remote machine, SSH key option. Do you guys remember this? You guys all did it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, we are trying to enforce SSH-based authentication, passwordless authentication for the user, so that we can pull information and push information without the need to type the password. For that only, we created public and private key on the local machine using SSH keygen command. Keygen-t RSA command. This will ultimately create a private and public key pair. Clear? Any doubts? Okay. Silent, I'll take it as everybody is happy, everybody has understood. Okay. So I'm moving on to Terraform introduction a little bit. So tell me, how many of you created EC2 instance from console so far? One by one. Ganesh, have you created EC2 instance from console?
Same.
Okay. Who else? Who else?
I
Not
created and
okay. Srini, Kushal.
Yeah, created, but not from the console. I mean, you know, right? Public and private key authentications have failed due to duplication of the files.
No, that is okay. From
Yeah.
AWS console, did you create a EC2 instance to understand how it is created?
Yeah, created. Yes, created. Yes.
Okay. Because you need to have a fundamental understanding of what are the different things required to create an EC2 instance. For example, AMI ID, key name, key pair,
Yeah. Got it.
instance type, security group, your
Region.
VPC details. So region is by default coming in the top right corner, right? Region. So you may have to choose availability zones if you're choosing this specific VPC. Otherwise, you don't have to really think about your subnets or availability zones. Okay. How much time it takes for you to create a EC2 instance in console? Say for example, you're creating from AWS. Yeah.
It took almost 5 minutes plus for me.
So we can say 3 to 5 minutes. For example, you want to create hundreds of resources. Which mode would you prefer? You can probably do AWS CLI. right? Just write automation script using AWS CLI to create hundreds of instances. However, it is not very feasible because this requires some kind of coding skills, some kind of formatting and all, everything is like required. This is definitely much better than the AWS console option. But one disadvantage with this is we don't have a control of the history of the commands executed, history of commands executed, history of resources modified or changed. Resource information is available only in the AWS cloud, that is using CloudTrail. Well, see, this is not very important, but there is a resource called CloudTrail that has information record of all the resources created, modified, everything. But we don't have anything locally if you do it from AWS CLI. That's why we prefer to use Terraform to define our infrastructure requirement in a file. Say, for example, how many EC2 instances required, how many S3 buckets required, what are the other RDS instances required. That we put it in a .terraform file. All of these things in the .terraform files. And all together we'll keep it in GitLab repository. Then we can use this repository to create resources in AWS cloud. So for that, in order to connect to the AWS cloud, if it is a local execution, I mean Git bash execution, we need access key and secret key. If you have AWS CLI already configured, you have this two keys created already, and that is available for you to run Terraform commands to create resources in AWS cloud. Is it clear, or am I going a little fast? Okay. Moving on to the Terraform architecture. It is again simple. See, as a DevOps engineer, to start writing the .terraform code, .terraform files, and then you push it to your repository. It is a GitLab, and we have a CI pipeline that takes care of the push action and then creates resources in AWS cloud. So we need to maintain the terraform.tf state file. So we call it as Terraform state file. State file stores all the information about resources created in AWS cloud. For example, 2 EC2 instances, 3 S3 buckets, 2 RDS instances. All those information will be stored in the Terraform state file. The state file will be referred if you are updating any resources in your Terraform file and doing a Terraform apply. It will update this Terraform state file, read this Terraform state file, create resources, and then ultimately again it will update the Terraform state file. Okay. Any questions? Sure. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing the screen from this device. I'll start sharing from the other device. So anything you would like to discuss before I move on to the other screen?
Exactly not, Shankar, but while doing some, real time or working, right, then it may be more understandable.
Okay. I totally agree with you. But at the high level, with respect to the theory, whatever I told you so far, so is it confusing so much, or is it okay, reasonable to understand?
Yeah, okay, Shankar, but architecture level point of view, okay, where we are keeping the word repos, understood, but it took some time for me.
Sure. Okay.
I'll go through this video records again.
Sure. Okay. So, am I audible now? I'm from the second device now.
Yes, audible.
Okay, I'll share my screen. I'll quickly show you what I was explaining before with respect to this VA editor. The first thing we saw was VA editor, right? Basic Linux commands. Which was the first thing that we saw? Okay, we talked about git bash. So in my machine, it is a terminal that I use it for the quick commands like do ls. Say if I want to create a directory, I say test1. Use commands like cd to go to the particular folder, and then say if I want to create a file, I say vi or vim and file1. And if I want to go to the insert mode, I press I. So test line. So I press escape now to go to the insert command mode, and then I am pressing YY to copy, and then I am pressing P to paste the lines, whatever is copied. So I'm just going my cursor, taking my cursor to the third line. I'm doing 2DD for now. 2DD will delete 2 lines from the cursor position. So you can see that it is deleted. I'll probably there is a command called in the command mode. I can put set nu. That will put the line numbers for each line. So I'm just pasting lines here like this. Okay. Now I'm trying to delete 3 lines, 3 DDs. So 6th line to 8th line will be deleted. So it is 9th line. So you can see that 9th line is ninth line will be your 6th line for now. I am doing a 3DD. So you can see that 3 lines deleted and your 6th line becomes the 9th line. Few commands that you need to practice in order to become familiar with the VA editor, like DW to delete a particular word. If I do a DW, delete a particular word. CW is to copy a word. Change word, sorry. CW is change word. You can similarly, if you press Shift D, I'll just type it. Shift plus D will delete the complete line from the cursor position. Okay. From here, if you want to go to the first line, you can put :1. That will take you to the first line. If you want to put :6, it will take the cursor to the 6th line. Like that, there are some shortcuts available in the VA editor that you can make use of it.
Is there any redo functionality here?
Yeah, U for undo, redo for redo. So there are 2 ways that undo will be done using just U by pressing U. By pressing U, you can just keep on undoing things. If you type colon and then redo, it will repeat the undo. it will revert the undo.
Okay.
Okay, I'm moving on then explaining the SSH keys now. Say, like I told you before, when we run the SSH keygen command, it creates public key and a private key. So cat, so make sure you put a tilt symbol, and then .ssh is nothing but a hidden folder for your application, for your software. So if it is AWS, it is .aws folder in your home directory and credentials file, like that. If it is SSH key, it is .ssh, and ID underscore RSA is a private key. That's a private key. The same thing, if you want to see the public key in order to copy to the remote machine, you have to say ID underscore RSA dot pub. That is a public key. This is a key that we copy to your GitLab repository. Say, for example, if I go to GitLab, I could see that here in my profile settings, I have a preferences, and I go to SS keys, and I can see the keys already copied. And if it is not copied, you have to do add new key and put your key over here like this. So not this. So I have to do copy. Like this, we have to copy and then save this. Add key. Okay, how does the authentication works? This since you copy the public key to the remote machine, the private key on the local machine will be compared with the public key, and then the authentication will succeed. So I'll show you one diagram so that you can understand. Okay, so if you look at this picture, you can clearly see that there's a local machine in which you have the secret key that is nothing but private key that is used for authentication to the remote machine, whereas in the remote machine you have the public key already copied. That public key and private key will talk to each other and then initiate a connection. So initially, if you initiate a connection to the remote machine, the remote machine sends a message like, hello, are you there? Hello there, something like that. So your local machine, whichever has a private key, which will encrypt the message and send it across to the same public key. And if he is able to decrypt that information, read that information, decrypt it, then the authentication is successful. Then only they agree with the session key, and then the authentication is going further. Okay, any doubts on this? This is what is the fundamental behind private key and public key authentication. This is basically for the passwordless authentication, because we will be working on multiple machines, and we may have to connect to multiple machines in an automated way to do some activities. Okay, exiting now. So like I showed you before, AWS CLI, right? AWS CLI is configured using AWS configure command. When you run this command, it will prompt you for the access key, secret key, region, and output file, output format. That file is saved, that information is saved inside the AWS credentials folder file. .aws is a hidden folder, and inside that there is a credentials file in which it is stored. You can see that there are multiple profiles available. Default is the one that you will see normally. But apart from that, you can also create multiple profiles based on your requirement. For example, if you're creating multiple environments like a dev, test, stage, and pre-prod and prod, you can put all the keys, because I mean it will be different accounts that you want to interact with and create resources. However, you will have the same set of Terraform scripts available on your local machine. So that you need to create it on a multiple environment, then you can create multiple profiles. In order to create a different profile, what you need to do is you need to say profile, say prod account, like that. If you say, it will create a profile with a different name. So then you will ultimately see there is another profile added here that will have the new access key and new secret key. Similarly, you have .aws config file which contains the information about your region and your output.
Shankar,
Yeah,
that double like 2-3 profiles creation you mentioned, right?
correct.
So can you just repeat that one only, please?
Sure. See, when you have multiple accounts to work with, see, as of now, you're working with a single account, a single AWS account. But in an organization level, you will end up having different environments like dev, test, and stage. So those environments will be running on a either the same account with the different credentials or a different account, different credentials. In that case, you need to configure it in a way that it has a different profile name instead of just default. Because when you run AWS S3 LS, whatever commands that you run, in order to check what is available in your cloud account, you have to do it like this: AWS S3 LS, AWS EC2 describe instances. In case if you want to go and check with other profile, you can do it like this.
Here we're specifying like which profile you are like we are trying to get the information, right?
Correct.
By mentioning -FN profile and the profile name. But for creating that particular profile, we are using AWS configure, then the particular profile name.
Correct. Dash profile and profile
Okay.
name.
And the access key and secret key will be created when in that profile when we are creating the IAM user, if I'm not wrong.
Correct. So
Okay, that is where I got confused.
set of access key and secret key.
Mm.
So you need to make use when you are doing the AWS configure.
Got it. So just here we are like using this configuration thing to connect with that second profile, maybe my dev environment. When I give AWS configure and the profile name, so it will ask the access key. So I will create it. I will use the manually created access key and secret key to get the authentication properly. Then whatever I need to do, like for resources and all, I will do it so that it will go according to the profile which I chose. If correct, no?
Exactly. That's correct.
Yeah,
So
got it.
now I'm moving on to Terraform. I mean, no other questions, right? I mean, before I move on to the next one.
Not from my end.
So I'm moving to the GitLab repository. One other thing that I wanted to show you before that is this slide. So I'll go once again. So this one is a representation of whatever I had drawn in the note. See, you have a remote repository, which is nothing but your GitLab repository. This you can either create it from console or from command line. So your working directory is your git bash. From there, whatever files that you change or you added, you can do a git add to put it in the staging area. Staging area is not even local, it is just before local. So you can call it as, it's probably creating a stage for your repository, stage for your commit. After that you do a commit, it becomes your local repository. Then only you will be able to do a git push to the remote repository. At the same time, when you do a git pull to fetch information from the remote repository, it will come to the local repository. I mean local repo location. Then only you can either do a git checkout or git branch to create a new branch. So at a high level, this I mean you will slowly understand when you start working on Git. You will slowly understand things one by one. But at a high level, this is the architecture. Any doubts on this? Okay, moving on to the Git repository, which is already there with us. Like if you do ls-al from whichever repository that you are part of, you will see a .git folder that contains all the configuration information about your Git repository. Git config -- global list. So it is -- list. So this will show you the username and email ID. So the same command, you may need to do it first. User.name, your username, you should put it. Next one should be global.user.email, global user.email. You can put your email ID so that it has a record of what user you're logged in as, how you're trying to, as what user you're trying to push your commits. Okay, I think time is up. We'll probably see tomorrow. I have another session to continue. I'll just show the .git/config file. So you'll see the remote origin. That is about your remote repository location. So using this information only, it will push your changes. Sure. Okay. We'll connect tomorrow 8 o'clock. Okay. Thank you guys. Any other questions? Anyone?
No, Shankar, thank you.
Sure.
No, Shankar.
Sure. Okay. Thank you guys. Bye.